unified defense against a system that has a unified approach. And what I mean that is that solitary confinement units are overseen by the Department of Corrections, or in New York State, Department of Corrections Community Supervision. It is not an internal running system. It is made up of city employees and state employees, right? There is also oversight within the state. Some states have correctional associations, some states have citizen oversight, Board of Corrections. So when you speak about solitary, it has nothing to do with any of that, because it is the facilities administration that confines that person. No one is there for a capital punishment. No one is there for this horrendous crime. People tend to say that solitary traps the worst of the worst, and just the Hannibal Lecters of the world, and if we just don't keep them closed up, they're just gonna jump up and bite your face off. But that's not true. The New York City Liberty Union, we did a report with them one year called Boxed In, and you can look at the results, and 5 out of 6 tickets for non-violent rule infractions, like having too much postage stamps, like reckless eyeballing, which is looking at an officer, right? Passing different items, which is, you know, considered your property. So you can't even say, hey, the guy in the cell next door, you want to read this magazine, because he's going to be locked up for possession of stolen property and unauthorized exchange, right? And also the 106.10, disobeying a direct order, just comes along with it. So we've created a system that punishes people inside the prison system. And before we speak to our panelists, before I talk, I just want to set the framework for how the system operates, right? I was in my cell. I got charged with possession of stolen property, unauthorized exchange, hoarding, disobeying a direct order, of course, and of course, multiple weapons. And I went to solitary for that. The unauthorized exchange was the guy next door. He's like 5, you don't get much mail. My wife sends me these Black Enterprise magazines. I'm a white guy from Buffalo. Here, you want to read these? So me having his property with his DIN numbers on it, he created that. If I would have said he gave it to me, then he'd go to box 2. So since I didn't say that, it's possession of stolen property. Hoarding, I had over the amount of postage stamps and 2 pillows. I also, destruction of state property, I tore up my sheet because I used to fish, because I lived in a 6th floor tier, so it's 50 cells. Well, fishing, right. Fishing is a system of exchange because you're locked in your cell if you're not going out to programs and maximum security facilities. And if it's say like Auburn with 50 cells and then 6 floors of that and then 6 floors behind that, we have an intricate system, because if he's on the 3rd floor and I'm on the 6th floor and I need to get a bag of rice from him and I got a can of corn and he got a can of beans down the hall, we're gonna make a meal together. It's also when you confine people in small places, the human thing to do and the human reaction, the normal human reaction is to connect with the next human being next door, the next human being down the hall, right? Possession of stolen property, unauthorized exchange, and then also possession of multiple weapons. I'm an artist, I do portraits, so the CO written up as 24 sharpened wooden objects, basically pencils, right? And I had a permit for that, which they just took off the wall when they came in. So this type of trivial ticketing is very known in New York State, but more so highest than in the country. So 5 out of 6 people are in solitary for New York State for non-violent rule infractions. Which brings me to my first guest, and definitely a brother who has experienced it as well.
Before you speak, I just want to let folks know the reason why we're here.
Yes.
Because of the producers of this play, Matthew and Ice, they contacted about 7 or 8 local organizations, activists, and they gave us this theater on their off nights. So let's give a round of applause to the producers of this play called Agnes.
Yes.
It's the first time an off-Broadway theater has done this.
Yes, literally, yes. Yes. And if you haven't seen it, you must see it. It's a play about the future of incarceration, and it's amazing, and you should play it and support it. And if not, share it with your friends, you know? Can you give us your name, sir, and maybe speak about your experiences, but also the New York campaign for Pentecostal Society?
Okay, my name is Sekou Shakur, and I had the fortune or the misfortune, depending on how we look at it, to spend 34 years in the New York State Department of Correction. I've been home March to be 4 years. Of all the maximum security facilities in New York State, the Max A, that's the highest level facilities. I spent at least, I've been in every one of them at least one time, except for the double bunks facility, because I refused double bunk. with another man. So all the maximum skill, I've been in the special housing units at least one time. So that's a number of facilities. And as he said, you can be in there for anything from an extra bag of sugar to assault on staff. Most of my infractions were the more severe ones. But the level of humane treatment that goes on in the Department of Correction is just like you saw in the film, and watching that was kind of difficult for me. I didn't think I wasn't prepared for that, because that's what goes on, and the friendships you see, the people losing their mind, their sanity, losing their purpose, losing their strength. Young people, sometimes you got guys in there, 16, 17-year-old, where their mind is not fully developed, and they put them in a cell. And some of the cells that you saw, we had open cells, what we call, where you could reach your hand out and get balls and touch and pass. Well, those aren't no longer too much in the system in New York State. Now they got the cells where you're boxed in, you're closed in, you're in that cell by yourself. So just imagine being in that kind of environment 365 days for like 20 years. And that's the majority of special housing units are built like that now. So it's a dark place to be. I don't know how some of us get through it. You can hear people crying, actually over the years, over the days, over months, people losing their minds, coming there strong, well developed, thinking, and actually become vegetables. And like you said, they might have came in there for having too much sugar in themselves, an extra box of rice, or maybe you spoke to the officer the wrong way. You get those charges, you go to the hearing, someone's gonna find you guilty, and you go into the box. And you've probably been there a long time. They may give you more charges as the days and the months go on, just to keep you in there. And some guys, to get away from population, they do something to go to the special housing because they feel it's more safe in there because they just sell by themselves. And then they realize that they put themselves in the rabbit hole, which there's no returning from. So, my personal experience has been everything from, torture. I've experienced torture in special housing units. And when you're young, you think that it's just part of the course. It was a time that whenever you went to the box, an ass came automatically with it. Yeah. That was guaranteed. You go to the box, you automatically gonna get jumped on.
Off the gate.
Before you get to the cell, that's just automatic. And that was just how it was. Things are a little different now, but it's still brutal. It's sadistic, and it looks like some of the worst correction officers take the jobs of working in special housing. They are the worst of the worst.
Shakur, you mentioned seeing the youth, right? And I want to let everybody know that, we live in a state where 16, 17, 18-year-olds are prosecuted as adults. We've I'm going to say sort of abolished that because we did pass the raise the age, which wasn't the original legislation, which actually isn't going to start until 2020. So the messed up part is that it doesn't come with retro. So that means that when the day it does start, the kid the day before is still going to be charged, and then the next day people will come in and out and leave that system because they won't be charged. So one will get a court appearance ticket, and the other one is going to be serving time, right? So right now, if you send your child out to school and he's going to school and the cops arrest him and he's 16, 17, you're not going to hear back from him because technically he's an adult once he's in the system. So they don't have to call the parents because you're not the parent, he's an adult. You told his lawyer. And the lawyer says, legally, I can't even tell you anything about your son's or your child's case. And I didn't heard, we didn't heard the worst from parents. Like, I just gave him a Metro card. He ain't even got money to take care of himself. Like, he's a kid. And it's like, no, he's not. He's an adult. Because we live in a country where we prosecute kids at a young age. What I wanted to ask you was, not only being a survivor, because I commend you for your time, comrade, but we also witnesses. And sometimes we see things. I'm a parent, I'm a father, and I've seen so many young men, it makes me look at them as my son, How did you see the youth coming in and how they changed throughout that? Because they go in a certain way and they just don't come out the same.
Well, growing up in prison, I got arrested when I was 18 years old. And I was sentenced to 20 years to life. And I wound up doing 34 years. No one tells you how to do time. The most you're going to get from the old timers is, don't mess with the homosexuals, don't snitch, and here go a knife. You know what I mean? And really, that's basically what they're gonna tell you. But other thing they tell you, get your GED. For some reason, get your GED before you come hang out in the yard. So like 3 days a night you gotta go to school. The other 2 days you can come out to the yard. So that was one of the things they were strong on. Get your GED. After that, you can be a savage. You know what I mean? I was fortunate also. I come from a political family, so I had a little balance. But the peer pressure of growing up in prison still robs you of some of that. You know, so it took me about 15 years to realize, man, I have to get my stuff together and grow up, mature, work out some of that stuff. So, what you see with the young guys in prison, you're just trying to survive. You know, I got locked up in 1980. Things were different. I mean, it was still prison. You know, you had to survive. You know, so showing the soft side, trying to be cool and all that. That wasn't what it was about. It was about surviving. So I took it very seriously. So I wound up catching new charges, assault on staff. That's what I wound up being all the special housing units at least one time, because I had to go out of that, I had to go through that. So as you get older though, when you mature, you get some,
little knowledge on it.
Get some knowledge, get some courage, some real courage. Then you start seeing the young ones come through, and you want to make sure they don't do the same thing that you did. Right. You don't want them to grow up the way you grew up in the prison system. So we try to give something back to them and do the best we can. And then that comes with some struggle with the staff. Right. So that causes you some more problems with them.
But then you become an influencer.
Yeah.
Right. Kayla, my sister, I love you. Please let everyone know what you do. Kayla's an amazing, amazing woman, an amazing activist, organizer. Please.
Thank you. Hi, everybody. My name is Kayla. I served 5.5 years in New York State prison from when I was 18 to 23. I've been home 2 years. Solitary confinement is just another example and another more proof, which we don't really need much more proof of everything that's going on, of the intentional dehumanization and breakdown of a human being that, when what leads us inside in prisons, instead of being looked at as a human being that can be redeemed and helped and, given tools to build themselves back up, they take you and you become like their target to dehumanize and to otherize you and just look at you as if you're a savage and putting you in solitary confinement. They for anything. Can you imagine a bag of rice? Or I gave somebody a magazine. No, I'm a human being, and just because I'm in this facility or I'm inside of a place where you have the authority to do whatever you want with me doesn't make me less human. So if I want to look at a magazine because you have a rule that is something that you wouldn't be able to follow by because it's stripping you of your humanity and of your basic human living, you're going to use that and lord it and put somebody in a space where that damages them for life. Like, people need to understand that, once you're aware of what's going on inside of these prisons, it becomes your moral responsibility to actually fight to change it, because if not, you're just co-signing torture. Because there's collateral consequences that impact you, yourself, and society, because guess what? When you put people inside of prison cells, and especially solitary confinement, and it's by force, people actually begin to isolate out of comfort after a while. Because I know for me, I've been home 2 years, and guess what? A lot of the time when I want to shut down, and I want to shut off, and I can't handle life, and things are just going wrong, I will isolate, I will pick up the phone, I will literally put myself away, and I've learned how to survive in that way. And it's not surviving, it's suffering, but it detaches you from reality, and it detaches you from having trust in society and being able to say, hey, look, I'm fucked up right now, can you help me? It's, no, I'm fucked up right now and I can't trust anybody, so I need to isolate. And so, it's so much, the system, it just continues to show more and more the dehumanization. And that's what we have to look at, because guess what? What is it going to be until it's you or your family? Then you're going to be in front of City Hall or, oh my God, listen. Okay, but, we've seen over and over and over again that it happens to other people. So this is something that, it's getting worse. It's not getting any better. They're banning people to reading certain books right now. It's just the stripping of the human being. And anytime you're intelligent or if you're trying to help the youth, they will put, that's how that's like a mini form of political prisoners anyway, of like any sort of politics, any sort of trying to overthrow a system, they want to stop you at that. And it's overthrowing a system to bring humanity. So, I know for me this was like disturbing, and I was kind of just like, wow, people suffer. I know people that have done time like that too in solitary confinement. That I know a man, what did he do, 33 years before he died? He came home. Would he die after a month? Would he die 2 months after he came home?
Yeah, that's my phone.
Yeah.
That's my phone.
Yeah.
Chaz, 92 days.
Yeah, he was home. Yeah, not even. And
Chaz came home first day right to my office.
Yeah, and I met him.
Already
Got right busy.
got right busy.
And he actually got to speak with Oprah and do the interviews with Oprah. And can you imagine?
He had his own film and going to try back everything.
And people don't realize that things like this it causes people to die early. Like we're literally losing people because the mind is so fragile. You know
what kills me? What I always wanted to ask you, Karen. I'm glad I got you in a little spotlight right now. So in the cups of this women's rights movement and a lot of things that should have been happening nationally, of course, and equality, there is no sort of focus, which of course your job is, and you're focusing it back into the prisons as well, saying this is great, but we have women suffering. We have women still being shackled during childbirth. We have women who are in solitary who are 9 months pregnant, and at the time that they have birth, they've been shackled to a bed, chained to a bed. They go into the delivery room. Baby goes one way. There's no back in the child. 9 times out of 10, one of the babies them is going to die, right? There's also no human rights as far as women in unique conditions, right? So if you're in solitary, you're not getting no sanitary napkins. They're just going to give you a half a roll
You're not
of
even
toilet
getting
paper.
a shower.
Right?
You're not allowed to take a shower. And it's like, does this treatment measure out to what you're saying that a person did wrong? Like, at any point, is it okay to say that someone's human rights are not, they're not allowed to be treated like a human being? It's just, it's so outrageous to me. And then the whole idea of someone being shackled while they're giving birth, it's almost like people have to stop looking at, COs and these people that are enforcing these laws. They have to say, like, would I want this for myself? And take a genuine look. No, you would want compassion. If that was your child and say she did something, you would say, no, but this is my child and I want X, Y, and Z for her, and you should have some sort of understanding and compassion. It's like, it's almost like they put on that uniform or they get that position and it just puts on this shield of that, like, otherizes you from them, and like their humanity is like so superior and yours is just so
the language, you become a body,
non-existent.
you become a package.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? You become
a number. You become a number, and you become almost like a commodity and something for them to poke at and take out their issues and their anger. And that's not what we need. That's not what we want. That's not how can we live in a society and expect to be progressive and to be proud of where we come from and to just say that we're even caring human beings or that we care about human rights if this is what's going on, and these are the people that we're commending, and that when they die they had these honorable funerals and they're just such honorable soldiers and heroes. And no, how you treat what society finds as the
Sorry, don't let me stop.
But then this is not a past thing. This is going on right now for any little thing. I mean, I know kids that were 16, 17 years old that went inside prison and they will never bounce back because the mind is so fragile. And this is honestly, I started a research study that I have to get back into, which is post-incarceration syndrome. And it basically like shows like that there's so many, like the after effects, like the trauma of institutionalization is forever, because people think once you get out, okay, like, oh my God, you endured all those things, you're gonna, I'm sorry you endured that, but you're gonna be okay, you have a second chance. It's not like that. It's like at the end of the film, how they were saying, it's like boiling water, like it just continues. It doesn't, there's collateral long-term damage done.
Right.
So it's not so much like, all right, okay, we need to put an end to this practice and ensure this never happens to anybody. No, but what about the people that it has happened to?
And let me explain that a little bit before I shift the conversation just a little bit. So we work a lot on this issue, mostly because everyone's been in a box, no matter who's coming home, whether you're youth, whether you're elderly, whether you're part of a certain community that was outraged, right, or outcasted. So we have a great sort of symbiont system that we all can decide that we need to start at the dungeon. When you do outreach and upliftment, you're going from the bottom up and pulling a person up. So we have to start in the dungeon. So we work with the top 3 psychs on the planet Earth, Terry Cuppers, Craig Haney, and Stuart Grossian, who have been legendary legends in the sort of trifecta, the psychotherapy, the brain, and also the neurological science of solitary confinement. Mostly because NASA wanted to commission length reports years ago about afterfeed and how the muscle deteriorates and what would happen if an astronaut got stranded for 6 months or 8 months, right? Not caring about the prisoners that we've been incarcerating for decades, right? But so the psychs have also created a sort of gateway, and I've learned a lot from that. So when I was younger, there used to be a statement like, you must have been dropped in your head when you was a kid if you're acting weird, right? But that's actually true. A blunt force trauma to the cerebral cortex can cause your brain to have irreparable damage to how you make decisions. But inside of that is another cortex called the somatosensory cortex. It is what doctors call touch. It is sort of like our brains are huge computers and thinking functions. They connect to our optical nerves and the 613 nerve endings that run down our brain right into our eyes and sort of give us an instant snapshot so we can make decisions. Like if I'm talking to my son, he's texting and giving me body language and not listening to me, like, I'm like, you're not even listening to me. So by me seeing that and sort of feeling that and hearing him, and all of my senses are working together, I come up with a decision, right? What the somatosensory cortex also does is it controls and works with your subconscious. Your subconscious part of your brain sort of stores data that you can't understand during the daytime, right? You see 2 people on a 2-seated bike. You bump into some lady that you thought was your mother, and then you see somebody with like a Ronald McDonald suit, and then you go to bed and you have like Ronald McDonald and your mother's on a bike. You know what I mean? And it just puts it all together, right? So it sort of works out these things. One, when you're in an environment where your brain is on alert, you have no subconscious, which means there's more pressure on your frontal lobes. Decisions are stressing you because you have no parking space for it. So solitary itself is a torturous condition just for that. It keeps people's mind racing at a high point, right? And then within the somatosensory cortex, the reason why doctors call it touch is because your body, like your fingertips are sort of like your antennae, right? When you're taking a bath, hopefully everybody can agree to this experience, right? When you're taking a bath, your body says, well, we're not sure what you're doing, but we call this drowning. So your fingertips get all wrinkly and your toes get all wrinkly so that your body has suction cups to have grip because the body knows that the fingertips have no grip underwater. So it's an amazing sort of tool that guides our body. And then after 14 days, the brain starts to deteriorate. Those neurological nerve endings starts to reconnect. You start adapting to not smelling nothing. You start adapting to having a higher sense of hearing because that box, you can hear everything out in the hallway, right? Your patience level is down to this, which means you can go from 1 to 1,000 over a pack of salt. Like I had 2 packs on my tray yesterday. Why is there not one? And it sort of changes you. And and this is irreparable genetic damage. This is irreparable psychological damage. And it's permanent. And this sort of damage is what we're preventing because it's inhumane. And so when I say that, because I wanted to explain what you meant by it's irreparable damage, right? And how this is really a human rights issue of today. What did she put? One, the New York Campaign for Alternatives to Isolated Confinement has a bill coming up, right? The lobby day. It's March
16th, 17th,
March 13th, we're going up to actually petition this bill, the legislators in Albany. If you want to sign up, there's a clipboard there as well, or you can reach it at NYCAIC.org. But beyond that, there's a lot of moral perspectives on which in the work we do. And morally, solitary is wrong, right? Morally isolating a human being with no means of connection to other people, right? So, in your experience, in the time that you've done, what do you see some of the leading factors of people going to solitary. We know that substance abuse is the number one, right? People getting caught because of drug abuse. And then that sort of sets a cycle when you get to jail.
A lot of mental issues, man. You see a lot of.
That's what I was about to get to, right?
You see a lot of young people with mental concerns, and it might be due to substance abuse also. But you see a lot of that now. A lot of the guys on medication, and you didn't see that before. And maybe you might see the older guys on medication, but now you see a younger population on medication. It might be due to the experience of prison itself, and just dealing with trying to cope with it.
Yeah. You know, I blame New York, and people always say, "Why did y'all start in New York?" Like Robert's from Texas, and Albert's from Louisiana. But why did we start in New York? Is because all of the rules and laws in this country, a lot of them was created in New York. You know, a lot of people don't. You know, nowadays you hear more of Rikers Island, but people forgot that Ellis Island was the port that brought everybody into this country, right? The 62 counties that we live in New York State also have 70-something facilities and 2 female facilities. So people were cycled and funneled up into the prison industrial system, fed up into these rural areas, right? So as your neighbor is moved from your community, and every empty seat in this theater counts for a person in prison, that town is benefiting from that. That area is benefiting from that, right? Politically, right? So, you know, what was, well, 106.10, of course, but what were some of the reasons that you've seen other people go to the box?
Anything. I mean, anything from a fight, disobeying direct order, you know that.
Right. Which we have to say is whatever
Yeah.
the CO says, whether it's right or wrong.
Yeah.
Right.
Any ticket that's written by an officer is going to say disobeying direct order, and you're never found not guilty for that charge.
Yeah.
I in 34 years.
That's 100% conviction rate.
Yeah, you don't get found not guilty for that. So, I mean, it could be anything. I mean, anything from a guy go to the mess hall, and I think they give out 4 to 6 bags of sugar, right? Say he picks up an extra one, you go to the box for that.
Yeah. Or not leaving in the mess hall, you walk out and they search your house.
Right. I mean, it could be anything. I mean, just think of the minor thing you can do to the most serious thing, assault on staff.
You know, I kind of see it as a breaking of human nature, because the normal things that humans would do to another human being, like if you needed something, I might just give it to you. Right?
Unauthorized exchange.
Unauthorized exchange. There's no talking to a person, right? So you'd be talking to a person. I remember I was in Lakeview, and I got a ticket for talking too loud on the gate. And I was like, there's microphones on the camera? Like, seriously? I'm talking to the guy in the cell next door, and I get a ticket for that? But I want to talk to you about long-term solitary, because the bill is the humane alternative to long-term isolated confinement. And the thing in New York State is that we're not sentencing people to straight out write 10, 20 years. That person is catching reoccurring tickets. One day, I get insulin, and I'm diabetic. I was in Lakeview, and I was getting insulin, and they brought it to my cell. And so the needle broke, sprayed a little blood on her, she was gone. But I'm just out of insulin. So I only have like about, the next day up until the next morning till somebody else comes. And this is 3, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, so I'm done till the next morning, and hopefully that guard. So this guard is my only chance of getting enough insulin to stay alive and sort of have this, continued status, I have to say. There was no way for me to get this sort of momentary moment, because people think that you're hanging in the gate, you're talking to the COs, like you have this great connection and communication. They're trained not to make eye contact. When you serve the tray, you open the slot, you put the tray, you step up, you grab the tray, you close like it has to be done just like that. And as soon as I just said, hold on a minute, oh, you're holding up the feeding, and then another ticket, right? So the pervasiveness of petty ticketing, can you speak a little bit to that, and maybe your experience on what you've seen?
What's a ticket? What's a ticket?
Ticket is a misbehavior report. Any charge, any violation of any of the prison rules, the officer is going to write a ticket. So that ticket, you're going to get a written report of what he says that you did. It's going to go to a sergeant or lieutenant, and you're going to go before a hearing.
Please break that down.
And a kangaroo court, basically. You're going to plead your case, call witnesses, and then he or she will find you guilty.
Yeah, you're not gonna win.
Right.
So, the question about, if you get, you said, what can you?
No, I'm just saying, elaborate on some of the things that you've seen that people have caught tickets for. Like silly situations sometimes happen.
Passing something, talking in the hallway, giving someone some food, talking too loud,
More than 5 people in a group.
More than 5 people in a group, not getting to your cell on time. I mean, just think of it. I mean, just the most simple, silliest things. Be on the phone too long.
You know, I was in NYCAIC, and the Donnelly brothers, I hate them. They used to roll tissue down the tier, and wherever it stopped, you just getting a ticket. They open it, give me ID. It's herb tickets off the gate, and they was very famous for that. It's sort of a scary sight because, you know, for a young person too, because it's 2 tiers, so it's like 96 cells.
And they tell you don't talk on the tier.
Yeah, they say don't talk, and it's quiet. It's literally quiet because
go for it.
Yeah, they will pull you out and way down the hallway like a little city block lawn. They come down here, and they'll never come back. You know?
I remember that. I didn't stay there long.
Kayla, some of the challenges, you know, that you've seen women go in and come out, right? The hard part, I think, is not going back in a second time. You know, you get a ticket, you go in. Some people don't never come out because of their conditions. They continue to deteriorate. But a lot of times people come out and they're 100 times worse than they are when they come in.
Well, their ability to even communicate on a level that's, you know, they kind of want to be back in isolation. And that's how I said, like, a lot of people, by force they go, and then it becomes by choice because that becomes comfortable.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like the human, you know, psyche, and especially for women, we're more fragile. It's just broken down so much. You just learn to surrender, and then you just become comfortable. And, you know, I've seen a lot of women that, all right, I'm going back to the box, like, and they just, like, lost their mind almost. And you know, for some people, they're kind of like the life of the facility because they're always doing something that's just outrageous. But then when you look at it, it's like they were created in that sense to be like that. They want that so that they can have an excuse to you know, physically put force on that person. Or, you know, it's sad. I saw a lot of people, and I've heard a lot of people say, I want to go back. All right, I'm going to, as my vacation. It's where they become comfortable. Like, can you imagine? And then that happens out here. So what I was saying for collateral consequences, like this is not just, you know, all of the people that get, you know, caught up in the system. Like, other people suffer from this because family members deal with this, loved ones. Imagine, you know, coming home and you get into a relationship and, you know, this person doesn't know your history like that. You know, they might know, but they don't understand. They're not your family. They didn't go through this with you. And then now they're dealing with you isolating or shutting off, having children where, you know, maybe you get into a crisis and you're a mother and you run away and you isolate. Like, this is real stuff and real damaging on our society.
And this is a core part of your work. You know, this is why I love what your work and sort of is around because it's going to benefit everyone. And it's going to benefit this country. It's going to benefit this world. Post-incarceration syndrome has to be a unique category, right? I myself, I am legally disabled and on Social Security because of solitary confinement. I'm the only person legally disabled in New York State. And it's case law. But there is no category for the collateral consequences of incarceration. There is no category for people who are dropped off, roughly 2,000 people in New York State are dropped off to 42nd Street, Times Square, here's 40 hours of bus ticket, good luck, make it. And you're dropped off, 20 million commuters, you got Spider-Man fighting the Statue of Liberty, you know what I mean? And you end up going through this sort of reintegration crash course, right? And it's set up to that you fail. Yeah. There is no system to support you. And you have to take into account the 500 to 1,000 years of slavery, of incarceration, of black code, right? And so this whole system creates a different psychological compound. And we argue this. We argue this from the CDC to the top psychs to the top doctors in the country to saying that we just can't go under post-traumatic stress disorder.
No.
That incarceration can't be
a component of it.
It's a component, right?
Yeah.
Right.
I mean, there's so many different components. There's like antisocial personality disorder, you know, because you always thought you weren't going to be passive aggressive with dealing with staff, and you know, it's outrageous. And every season it comes differently. Like, I'm still suffering. You know, I don't sit up here like, oh, I'm different from the rest, so I can speak about it. No, I'm suffering too. You know, I find myself in every season or in different situations that trauma and just things just coming in ways that are like, damn, I gotta fight this, and it's a fight and it's a struggle and you drown, and you know. But the thing with this is prevention, you know? Because we say all this, but all right, this is the result, this is the problem, and not only what the solution, but what's the prevention so that this doesn't happen in the first place to the next generation? Because this will just continue on, and I really think that it begins with trauma treatment, you know, because everything is trauma. This, you know, we go to prison a lot of the times because of our trauma, because of our unresolved issues. So it's taking into consideration of human beings, like how people treat, you know, how guards treat us when we're inside, how they don't have this human compassion, is the same way that ACS and all these other systems don't have compassion for children when they're acting out, or when they're abused, or when they're violent or showing signs. So it's almost the same thing, except it's magnified and it's illuminated on a much higher scale, but it's the same thing. So children, invest in them instead of looking to treat, oh, you're bad, you're bad, you're bad. No, let's have some human compassion, so that, guess what, in 5 years from now, that person that, you know, has been the black sheep or been, you know, always told that they're bad, then instead of them going out to a gang because that's where they feel comfortable, because those are people that have, again, been told they're bad, they're bad, they're bad. So finding some sort of solace and comfort in people that they can identify with, instead of that happening, we're actually building these people and saying, you know what, let me correct your behavior rather than condemn you. And then maybe we could stop the cycle. Because it's all a reflection of the same thing. It's just different with the school to prison pipeline. It's
and
all
these
that.
systems that exist, you said it so right, and I want to touch upon that. These systems, and I want to ask the question, the systems that exist out here are replicated inside.
Yeah.
Right? So anybody ever heard of stop and frisk, right? Stop and frisk is something pretty pervasive in New York. And stop and frisk is the practice of, you know, like I give you an example and keeping an eye. I'm sitting in the projects, I'm hanging out with a few friends of mine or something, and the housing cops pull up and jump out, and hey, you have ID, do you live here? They pat you down, they search you, right? This is sort of stopping you and frisking you and asking you, trying to catch you in a crime. And then I go to prison, I'm in the yard, and the guard jumps out on me and says, let me see your ID, put me on the wall and pat me down, like, what do you got on you? I'll send you to jail. I'm like, I'm already in prison. He's like, oh no, this is not prison. We got a box downstairs for you, that's jail. This is population. So there's sort of this symbiont system. Right now, historically, and of course, financially, it's the same systems, the same contractors that built the prisons and built the projects, built the prisons in New York State. The same developers, the same iron company, the same Otis Elevation, core craft and materials made in the prison then are sold back to the projects. And you, the citizens, are all the dupes. You're paying over $200,000 per person on Rikers Island. You spend $70,000 to $100,000 per person incarcerated, depending on their age. You're paying more for kids and more for elderly and more for women, right? And all of this is because I think a lot of times citizens don't know, right? How many people here know their senator? How many people know their assemblyman? Right? How many people know their city councilman? Right? These are people who are represented. I'm glad you do. These are people who represent your opinion in the state, in the Senate, in the assembly, in the community, right? So even just a handwritten letter saying, why am I paying $76,000 for upstate and Southport alone? Why am I paying $5 billion in the state for incarceration? Why do I have a governor whose father built these solitary units and won't close them, right? And why am I paying for that, right? And I believe that that sort of responsibility allows you to then speak from a constituent point, right? Because in New York, it's the highest, we just beat San Francisco for the most expensive place to live on the planet. Why is that? Because majority of those increments on your taxes is government spending on incarceration, prison, jail, the over-incarceration, right?
Not on heat and,
yeah,
and ensuring that, you know, people can live,
right.
like, it's you know, it's outrageous.
It is.
But we send these people to public office to represent us, and that's exactly what they do.
Right, and so that's why it's important March 13th for everybody to support the whole Solitary Confinement Act. But also wanted to say about these systems that, so with stop and frisk, there's a UF 250 form. And they just changed it actually, which is even worse. The UF 250 form was a form where a cop had to say why he stopped the person, like kind of write a little sentence. And then the ACLU started using those little sentences against the officer. So they made it multiple choice, like walking too fast, walking too slow, not walking at all, right? So they can stop anybody in those sort of categories. Now they have it what color you are and what community you're in, and they can label you a gang member and you go into gang registry. But it's so similar that I've seen that when I was in the prison, because that officer's getting paid. When he goes back to his precinct, it's like, good job, Dave, you've made us some money. You got a collar, right? And that little pink slip goes in the box, and they could have accountability. So the same system is sort of in prison. where the guards are doing the ticketing and charging you $25 for charge.
Yeah.
And Rikers Island is $25, the state's $5.
Say that's fine, sorry.
Right, and you mentioned that, my last time in the box was actually for that. A cop pulled me over, he thought I passed it to a friend of mine. And, he said, "What you got in your pocket?" And I didn't like this guy,
Yeah.
because he had already, I worked in the grievance office, so I
Oh, so
handled,
you already had it.
right, so I handled grievances from the inmate population, trying to fight their causes, right? So I already had a stigma already. This was a young, big guy, real cocky, and he got a reputation to put his hands on young people already. So, and I didn't like him already. And so when he approached me about that and told me what you got in your pocket, it just took me to another place. So that was my last time. I was in Shawanka, and I went to the box and got shot to Auburn box for that. But that's what they, just those kind of dynamics that go on. You know what I mean? Like these young guys, and to be fair too, because I've learned over the years that not to put everybody in a box.
Right.
You know what I mean? Some of these guys are young, they're impressionable. Just like when we were young, we were impressionable, and it works for both sides, man.
Yeah, it does.
You know what I'm saying? So they're coming in young, trying to prove themselves, like we were young, trying to prove ourselves. Nobody's unaffected by the system.
Right. Yeah, it impacts everyone.
But what's a shame is that they're, trying to make a name for themselves, but it's the fact that it's like, that's what they're trying to make a name for, that doing that gives them a name, instead of, having some sort of helping and humanity
Right.
and mentoring even, like, the guards could be so much more instead of just being an oppressor.
But you know what? I used to hate COs, I'm not gonna lie. And when I came home, I started and founded the Student Alliance for Prison Reform, which is now the nation's largest student group. And one of my students, Savannah, she threw a conference up in Canton, New York. The town is famous for lifesavers. That's it. Like, that's it. There's nothing else in the town. There's a gas station, there's a jail, there's a lifesaver factory. That's it. And there's a diner, and it's Stewart's. And she threw a conference where she had people who were students whose family worked in corrections. But now their kids are Amnesty International students. Now their kids are working for the Student Alliance for Prison Reform. Now their kids are doing solitary protest, right? And it became this sort of heated argument. At the end of the argument, it ended up being, well, how would you think I'll be able to put you to college? How would you think I'll be able to afford it? There is no other opportunity for me upstate in this rural county, right? And then the students used to come to me one by one, and it kind of broke my heart a lot. Like, 5, you know how my dad is when he comes from? He's in the kitchen, pacing back and forth, drinking a pint of gin. By the time he goes upstairs, he sleeps for like 2 hours. He jumps in the shower. He's right back at work. And I didn't really contemplate that I'm seeing this same face for years and years, 8 hours a day. Like, how's that impacting him? Right? It's only making me more dangerous for him, right? For this environment. So it's 2 ways too. And we don't think about that, and we don't think about how we're spending for supervision and damaging those people as well. And if we really wanted to, we would put more resources there. New York, we seem to be very well building this way, and there's no resources upstate. The dairy farmers and the farmers upstate don't have, and the produce farmers don't even have a market to sell to, right? So they have to sell to the prison, right? They have to exchange that for labor.
Yeah,
So
literally,
Herman
that's
Brown changed that.
that's all the investment is, and that's the key too. Like, divest in these type of systems, and in this labor, and create more things that are not about helping people, rather than you make a lot of sense though, because you don't think about that. You don't think about how they're even used as pawns in this whole thing.
Yeah. I want to open up for questions, and I just want to mention a very big part that Kayla's work as well, and with Elaine Bartlett, who's in the room, I want to shout out. It's called Participatory Defense, and it's a project in which people can actually give input on their cases, right? When a person goes to jail, we tend to don't see the ripple effect of the impact from the mother, from the daughter, from the community, from the church member, from the principal, from the school, from the daycare, from the babysitter, right? And this is the neighborhood who knows you. These are people who can actually make statements and maybe account for your time in certain places, or during disciplinary hearings, and sort of character witness statements, right? And it's important to gather that, because that would help the person go to trial. We live in a state where 97% of the convictions are all plea bargains, which means nobody's going to trial. You see horrible cases when you do go to trial, like Khalif Browder, like other incidences that happen on Rikers all the time. Riley Ballard, Jerome Murtaugh, people are dying and sort of being murdered, but also remaining there for 3 years. Like, why is this person there for 3 years? He was just trespassing in the hallway. So participatory defense is done by life to life, life out on the outside, and also Exodus transitional community. And I think it's going to be a new system of data accountability and sort of bringing community members together and saying that, you know, this one person is suffering in this dark spot, but this is the impact of so many other people from
And
that.
also, on top of that, it's just basically giving the people back the power and saying that it's not just left for the DA, the judge, and the attorney to kind of just do whatever. It's, you know, we have a say, and, you know, our communities can come together and hold them accountable and humanize the person instead of them just being, you know, condemned for what they did rather than the whole picture being painted of who they are.
So I wanted to open up and ask anybody if they had questions, whether it's about the film, whether it's about solitary, what you can do.
Well, one is just what you said. How does that work? Does the judge see the things that people say about the person? Does he bother to read it?
Yeah, in that, the lawyer, works together with, you know, if the lawyer agrees to be a part of the team, because we give the families and, basically the tools, then it does come to the judge's attention, and it's all worked out in between there. So it's like a new system. It's kind of like a fourth component.
It's really important. I mean, I had a wild son, and I pulled him out of jail a lot of times, but I'm white, and I'm middle class.
Yeah.
And you're conscious, just
And-
being able to say that.
Yeah, yeah.
When Louima I said, I called in all the time saying, you know, the cop said, threatened my kid who was 15, we're gonna send you upstate New York and stick a gun butt up your ass. But they didn't do it because he's white. So I kept calling in saying, hey, you know, we got off lucky.
Yeah,
I heard him say something about a ticket and $25 fine. You telling me you have to pay for a ticket and then go to the box?
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. They're gonna find a way to make some money off it.
Right.
I mean, this is America.
And anytime you get a ticket, you have to pay.
You're gonna pay. You found guilty, you're gonna pay for it.
And most people, and I was just
Right out of
gonna
your
say,
family.
I was
Yeah.
just gonna know, or say that you don't, and you're getting that 10 cents an hour, and that's the money that you need for, you know, to
Yeah.
survive, for maybe pads, or sanitary pads, or a soda, or anything,
Food, just to
toothpaste,
eat. Yeah. Yeah.
they take it out of that.
Yeah. And so
And you don't make $5 a week.
and do understand that nobody is getting paid in jail, right? So you get 16 cents an hour at the Department of Corrections, and there is something called medium withdrawal. And what that means, if you have fines and court fees, then they'll take out up to 75% of that. So you're getting 75% of 16 cents, and then they're taking that too. Now, no, you're getting charged too, because when you,
It's in Ferguson, how they
yeah, definitely.
support the town.
We currently have, I wrote a bill with the speaker, and it's against JPay. And JPay charges you for depositing the money, and then charges him for taking the money and spending it. So you're getting double booked and double billed. One of the great accomplishments that I want to say with this campaign that we've done is one of the legislations I wrote was on the loaf, and we have that abolished, right?
Well, yeah.
The loaf is a torturous component that it's a meal punishment. It's basically taking cabbage and baking it into a loaf of bread and then freezing it for preservation and then defrosting it and giving it to you.
Mhm.
Has anybody ever had defrosted frozen cabbage?
Cabbage with bread.
It's pretty, so it's basically gonna give you diarrhea and strain your system, and
It
you'll get
binds
that for
you
2 weeks.
badly,
Yeah.
yeah. And that's what they give people in solitary confinement. Like, that's like the last, like, way to punish you.
Right. So we abolished that in the group. We also ended old box time on Rikers. That was also one of the legislations that we did with Councilman Drone with Jails Action. Because I felt that, you know, and I always want to shout y'all out and basically uplift your voices too, because it's only done by posting cards for the leaders. And it always struggles with me. Like, nobody thought of this before we came. Like, before we thought of writing this bill, nobody thought of this. Like, the fact that you can go back to Rikers 10 years later and they just throw you back in the box. Like, so I think
Yeah,
it takes.
that's,
Yeah, I want to salute both of y'all and give a round of applause because, yeah, no, I mean, posting cards for leaders are always using their own trauma, and we relive trauma every day. So I had to say to teach and educate y'all.
Yeah,
So,
and so, but it, you know, the thing is that it's like, for me, I don't want every time, it's just not to, I want it to be a purpose, apply it, don't just, oh wow, that's, you know, another horrible thing going on in America, well, and it's hopeless, like, all of our voices together and people actually strategizing and organizing and coming together, because you don't have to wait to be impacted to make the change, because
you may not be directly impacted, but everyone is impacted
no, right, but
because
I'm
you're
saying
paying for it.
exactly.
You're
No,
paying for
we
it.
all are impacted but
Yeah.
proximity of
Right.
it, where you feel it in your,
Yeah.
in your heart and
And-
every day.
And I always want to remind that New York State has a very unique law that's in the state constitution. So everyone convicted in New York State has to return to their county of conviction. So your neighbors are returning. How they return and their mental stability of how they return is really dependent on you and your legislators.
Yeah, that's part of the work that, well, that's part of the work that we do now. I'm an executive director of a nonprofit organization called Challenge to Change. And we started that program while we was inside, and it was such a success that the Department of Correction co-opted the program and made a mandatory program for it. That's called Thinking for Change now. So, and that's what we're looking at. We want to make sure that the men and women that come home are in better conditions than they were when they came in.
Yes.
So that's what we're doing.
A vital component. Questions, sir?
A challenge to change.
One of the things that was in the film, as well as in the Khalif Browder situation, seems to be the plea deal. And it seems like those people who refuse to take a plea are treated more harshly than they would be if they, took the plea deal. Could you speak to that?
Well, I think the example of that, lately you see all that, the football player that stood up for Colin Kaepernick and he took the knee. So he's making a stand against the system. But whenever you make a stand against the system in America, that's what you're going to do. You're going to get the full brunt of the system against you. And that's part of what's going on. So you go to court and you say that I'm not taking the plea. So this return looking at you like, how dare you not?
Right.
Oh, you're not going to take the plea? Then I'm going to do everything. I'm going to bring the whole weight of my office against you.
To get you to take the plea.
Yeah.
Yeah, to break you down.
Oh, they got places that break you as well, so let me just speak a little bit about Rikers Island. And so while you're being remanded on some charges, because mostly, the majority of the charges is about bail. And bail is basically about if you have money or not. It is not about if you're guilty, if you're innocent, it is a ransom, right? So poor people can't afford bail. That just says that you're isolating that just strictly for poor people, correct? And then you'll be remanded to a facility like Rikers Island, which is the nation's largest penal colony, the second largest in California. We've done, as activists and organizations and post-incarcerated leaders, an immense amount. Like, we've actually shrunk the population from 20 to 30,000 down to 9,000, and that was amazing. You know how that was done? We created bail funds. That's just how many people there was for $200, $300, $400, $500. You just couldn't afford the bail. And so within that environment, it becomes this sort of keg, this powder keg, in which you're beaten every day, the offices every day. Please go down Incarcerated Nation YouTube and watch the Rikers documentary, or be here on the 8th, and you can see it and speak to other professionals from the Department of Correction as well. And within the film, I did a film with Bill Moyers and sort of mapped out how the system molds these characters, right? So when you go to Rikers, they have the first 6 cells are for house gang. And whatever gang is sort of the biggest in the house get those cells because they get the job. The jobs pay $11 a week for maintenance. In other words, your maintenance is cleaning up after 11, but I need you to lock everybody in at 10 because I know you need to go see your friend and go do something or hang down there. So, right, and it empowers you. And then you're my point guy. So now I bring in drugs, I give it to you, and then you just give me cash into this. So I'm leaving work every day with a couple $100. I'm leaving work every day with money. And if something happens to you, you're the usual suspect anyway. You're just gonna go to the box, right? So that system is where you're waiting to go to trial. And you could be doing 6 months next to the guy doing 10 years, next to the guy facing murder, next to the guy who's doing 90 days, next to the guy who's leaving tomorrow. And this sort of powder keg creates a pressure where you're like, I just want to get out of here. I'll take whatever it is because I'm gone. And then the overcrowding, and when you have to also include the ingredient of mass incarceration. So we have 2 million people, you can't service nobody. So your next court date is 2 years from now, a year from now, right? So even if you are going to be let free, that's going to be a year from now. But they're offering you 6 months and 5 years probation.
Exactly.
You're like, I
And
might as well just take that 6
the
months,
conviction.
get out, and then you have an offense.
Yeah.
So plea deals don't work. A lot of people sit back and watch Law and Order. And they think that there's this hyper-masculine lawyer, and there's a defense team, and there's a morally impeded judge who just, want to do the right thing. Like, no, not with a 2-block line in front. You got to service people like next, and it becomes this supermarket style of justice. And in those words, I want to say thank you all for coming out tonight. And if there's any additional questions, we're going to be here as well. Thank you. Yes.
I'm just going to say
you can get multiple tickets
Also
and
mention,
multiple charges within the ticket. Right.
if someone even witnesses, then that puts them in jeopardy of being attacked by everyone.
Exactly.
Because they are saying, no, the officer says this is what happened, but this is what actually happened.
Right.
So that itself puts all of the witnesses in danger.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We're talking about women being incarcerated, and sometimes, if they were arrested for something I witnessed, in the supermarket, someone stole a box of macaroni and cheese. I guess she didn't have it, and they called 6 police cars to the supermarket to arrest her. I had come back in the supermarket because they overcharged me $2 for milk, right? And I said, no, I had just paid for it because I didn't want her to go through the system for $2
Wow, thank you.
that they just cheated me of.
Right.
They arrested her anyway. Took her purse, her ID, everything. Now, I also recall that when you're going through this, I remember one of the women at Rikers losing her mind because her family took her children, and I guess the children had taken, she had 8-year-old twins, if I remember correctly, that had stolen some chips in the store, and I guess they did it more than once. So they were taking her children from her sister to put them in the system foster care. So then she was hearing about them being raped and this, her twins. So she was slowly losing her mind on Rikers. And you hear some of the officers, I've been through, you said 3 years. I recall one of the officers saying that I've been divorced twice. Why are you still here in 4 years?
Oh yeah, there's people there up to 5 years waiting for trial. Yeah, 6, 7 years waiting for trial. Right.
So it's a whole, and they're claiming you're not supposed to be in the prison for more than a year.
Right. Well, no, we actually had to write a bill.
As you say, don't even get to court for 2 years and so forth.
Right, we have a speedy trial bill that is out in the city now. That actually pushes that you have a constitutional right to a speedy trial. That is in the Constitution. You have a right to due process.
And what is that time period?
That time period is within the year, But what they do is they say within the given calendar. So that means, which means it could be 2 years, 3 years, 4 years from now, right?
And the thing is, a lot of the times they like to say that they're gonna, give a better deal.
And you gotta remember, Mumia said it excellently, the law is whatever the last judge said it is. And whatever that last judge said, that's the law.
And maybe I should really quickly talk about this process. So there is no court. When we say court and hearing, it's a room, and it mocks due process. So due process, you have a judge, you have a jury of peers, you have an impartial judge, you have, if you don't have a lawyer, they will provide one for you. You don't even have to know the law; they will help you. That is all out the window. That officer who gave you the ticket, his superior officer, the judge, jury, executioner, court, decision making, everyone right there, and there is no chance of you winning.
Each other, they slap each other 5, but yeah, I did beat a ticket.
I mean, it's a rare thing, but I mean,
It's rare,
right.
yeah.
It's a rare
I
thing.
saw the 2 officers fight 2 weeks before the incident.
And this was in
so
docks? This was in docks or the VOP?
That's at Rosie's.
Oh, in Rikers. Okay.
Okay, on that note,
Yes.
please sign our petition
Yes.
here. Please sign our email list and
Thank you.
know what we're doing. We will be continuing this fight.
Yes.
What about the Innocence Project's plea deal problem?
Huh. Everybody